that window to, practice freely, and you talked of radical changes in the judiciary.
Yes, indeed. Because practice is two-way. As advocates,
yes,
we are from the bar representing clients, and the judiciary forms the bench which ultimately decides which way a dispute is decided. And Kenya was going through some very serious confidence crisis with the judiciary and, of course, even with the legal profession, and that had stifled the legal practice at that time. And that is why we celebrate His Excellency Honorable Mwai Kibaki, that during his time, certain buoyancy came up in the legal profession because there was a shake-up both at the judiciary and then inevitably within the practice. And therefore, we really celebrate Honorable Mwai Kibaki because it gave back confidence to the legal profession that you can actually prosecute your client's case and get the outcome based on the law and not based on the influence. It also brought to an end the mythology then that a judge has to look over their shoulder before they pronounce
and get certain
judgment, particularly when that judgment was directed at government. So it is during President Kibaki's tenure that we saw, the judiciary apply their judicial minds properly as judicial officers to determine.
Former Chief Justice William Mutunga said that at no given point did his phone ring while he was in office. So there was that level of independence from, from the executive to the judiciary and to the legislature.
Yes, indeed. You can remember that President Kibaki is the one who midwifed the 2010 Constitution.
Yes.
And indeed, it is during Kibaki's tenure that the first, activist, so to speak, took over as a Chief Justice. Quite unlike before, where, Chief Justices used to come from the judiciary.
Absolutely.
So it is indeed true that C.J. Mutunga brought in certain independence, certain perspectives from the civil society, and it did help. And well, if what he says is true, that his telephone never rang, then true, the judiciary was independent.
Yes.
But others argue that during the presidential petition, we should have expected better from the from the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the time that disallowed certain critical evidence that made a presidential election petition be determined on a technicality rather than on merit.
Absolutely.
Yes.
When you talk of technicality and merit and how to determine cases, that was the point where the fight against corruption began. Because, President Kibaki was so quite deliberate on actually strengthening the economy, which up till now, we can say that the economy did perfectly well during his time.
Yeah, precisely. Because the moment, and the Kenyans are very, very responsive to the business and political environment. And during the NARC government's tenure, President Kibaki had made Kenyans responsible for their economy. And you can remember the kind of advertisement that was going through from KRA, kulipa ushuru na kutotea kujitegemea.
Right.
And that environment made this country for the first time run a budget without a budget deficit. We were able to generate enough revenue to do our programs. You remember that it is during President Kibaki's time that he innovated the infrastructure bond kind of borrowing.
Yes.
Because unlike previous governments which were doing recurrent borrowing through treasury bills and therefore suffocating the economy, President Kibaki was able to introduce infrastructure bonds so that Thika Road was constructed not using a lot of foreign funding,
yes,
but from locally generated money. So you could say that
meaning it is possible we can do it from our own revenue collection.
Indeed, it is possible.
Yeah.
If government came up with proper financing, government paper, if government stopped defaulting on its debt, because we have a lot of pending bills which government is not able to service.
Yes.
And this is what scares away investors who would have otherwise put their money in government bonds, treasury bills, because this government is likely to default.
Yes. Wakili, you're an ex-banker and chair of Kenya Institute of Bankers in Nairobi branch. Give me your experience during President Kibaki's time, the strength of Kenyan shilling against the dollar, the growth of the economy. While you were inside there, what was the feel like?
No, as a banker, I'm telling you, we enjoyed President Kibaki's tenure because that was the time there was real activity.
What is it that you don't know, that as a banker you knew?
No. Of course, what you don't know is the various individual bank customer transactions and relationships, because those are protected by law and must remain at all times confidential. And even as an ex-banker, I cannot.
No, economically speaking.
Yeah, but economically speaking, if you looked at the Kenya Bureau of Statistics data of the number of banks branches that were opened during President Kibaki's tenure, if you can see the statistics of the turnover of the business of deposits and withdrawals that were done during President Kibaki's tenure, if you look at the rate of bank failure, because there was one challenge when a certain money was deposited in a bogus bank, and it was during President Kibaki's tenure that such bank was shut down. You remember we had a bank associated with some former anti-corruption czar. We had a bank that was associated with, I don't know, it used to be called Daima Bank. It is during President Kibaki's tenure that we weeded out what we can call kiosk banks that were out to defraud innocent and unsuspecting depositors. So the banking business grew, the employment levels in the banks grew, and you could see the GDP of this country also grow, because the banking activity and transactions are a measure of the economic activity in the Republic. And you can quite see that the higher the banking activity, the higher the growth rate. And that is why under President Kibaki, we achieved the highest, fastest economic growth in this Republic.
Kyria, you've been answered.